I think that we have to go to parallel stories. What is kind of surrounds um, the story of Luke from the side of other authors, and I want you to uh, address the account of Matthew about the end of Judas and what he did with his 30 pieces of silver. It is Matthew 27, 3:10. Matthew 27, 3:10. While things are being discussed in Luke about
Matthew, what?
Matthew
Yeah.
27, chapter 27, and verses 3 to 10.
When Judas, his betrayer, saw that he was condemned. Can you hear me?
Yes, well,
He repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned in betraying innocent blood. They said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and he went and hanged himself.
up to the verse 10, please, from 3 to 10.
Oh, from 3 to 10.
Yeah.
And throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and he went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, it is not lawful to put them into the treasury since they are blood money. So they took counsel and brought with them the potter's field and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Thank you very much. Interesting story, I think, from several points of view. First of all, repentance of Judah. What did he expect? Actually, I don't go into his psychology, what was going on, but he repented. He didn't repent before Jesus. Jesus was already arrested. So he saw what happened. Apparently, he expected the different end. And when he saw that he simply betrayed his teacher, he returned this money. Now, I want you to pay attention to very interesting reaction of the chief priests who took the pieces of silver and said, it's not lawful to put them into the treasury since they are blood money. So they perfectly understood what they did, but they were faithful to the law. It is interesting that, so let us do something good with this money. And what they did, so they took counsel. So there was kind of discussion, it was not just individual decision. And bought with them, so apparently not right, it's this very moment, but where this money went, it's also significant. Them to the potter's field to bury strangers in. So it's a good deed to build some kind of a cemetery for strangers, because strangers could not be, actually not Jews, they could not be buried on the land of Judah. So they bought a special piece of land, Potter's Field. Why Potter's Field? Because it has this kind of, panels, little caves. He digs up this clay, and then there's a little where you put usually, on the east bodies. So that this field called the field of blood to this day, Akeldama. It will be under this name recorded in Luke's Act, in Peter's sermon. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. So it's very symbolic that this money were returned actually to the temple officials, and they bought this cemetery for strangers. I mean, for, mystically speaking, for everyone who is not a Jew. Actually, the whole world was invited to be buried in this land of Potter, who is bought on the money of the blood of Jesus Christ, who by his blood, first of all, redeemed his people. Because in the same Matthew, the crowd cried, his blood is upon us and upon our children. So the blood of redemption. Now this blood of redemption kind of applied to all the strangers. So outside of the people of the old covenant. So what are your ideas about it, thinking about it, or questions about it?
I just would like to talk about the fact that there's a pun, and I have no idea if the pun probably occurred between the high priest saying that this is the money of blood and the earth of blood, the land of blood, Akeldama, because in both Aramaic and Hebrew, well, Hebrew probably already influenced by Aramaic because it's Talmudic. Damim is not only blood in the plural, but money as well, especially in the constructors, when it says like dmei, knisa, etc., when it's a payment for something, when it's a fee. It is possible that they themselves were not aware of the connection between this blood and redemption, because this is a fee, literally, a fee. What you pay for entrance, for any, it's like a ticket money. I find this very interesting, because that means that if the pun is entirely on Matthew, then it means that they are no more aware of this universal redemption than Caiaphas in John. In other words, they are also instrumental towards it, but they don't understand what they're instrumental for. So the irony then seems very similar to John's gospel, except it's a different passage, but essentially universalizing the salvation through it. It's very interesting because of the connection between blood and money. Money, not just money, but money as fee. It's not like silver. It's money paid per something.
Okay, anybody else?
This is, I just want to stress that this has nothing to do with anyone's psychology, including Judas, because when it says repented in Hebrew, just as in Greek, it actually means change his mind. So that means he turned back. And it may be as, you know, it's much less emotional than what Peter had. But it's like thought the better of it, or just was kind of wanted, as we say in today's world, rewind whenever you want to come back to some event that you're sorry about. But it doesn't mean that it justifies him, but it means that the narrative is deliberately not matter of fact, but deliberately factual, deliberately de-psychologizing stuff. And I don't want to justify Judas, but I think that, especially because I'm very familiar with the liturgical, you know, with the hymnology of the event, I really agree with Inga Leona when she says that a lot of those tihera are really a projection. The people who compiled them were greedy themselves, so they got fixated on Judas' greed, just the way they would about many other people's sins. So in the hymnology, we have a lot of psychologization and kind of scapegoating, evil thinking, while here it's a deliberately matter of fact, and it really sounds tragic. It sounds like, you know, the events may be described in a tragedy without judgment one way or the other, but noting when the actions become irreversible. That's it.
Thank you very much.
I find it interesting that Judas repented. He said, I sinned. And they say, well, we don't care, you know, it's your business. That's this discrepancy between his apparently sincere, it's not psychological, just what happens to him. He realizes what he has done. And they say, well, okay, it's your business.
Yeah, too bad for you.
Too bad for you, right?
Yeah, but you know, actually, in John, it is a straight line. You know, the decision, they, you know, high priests, the rulers, they adhere to their decision. The decision was done in the council right after the resurrecting of Lazarus. This man makes signs. His signs are powerful. People are following him. We're going to get rid of him. So it is the must in their mind to preserve this place and our people from Romans. So how are we going to do it? We don't know yet. We don't know, we don't want to do it on the Easter. That's the decision was made. So it's
on Passover, nobody would go at Easter.
Yeah, Passover. Yeah, definitely Easter. Easter something on Passover. No. So, but it's deliberate. So, but Judah came with his proposal. The proposal was accepted. The deal was made. Okay, you wanted money, we give you 30 pieces. You deliver him. Now you delivered. So, what do you want? What do you want? You know, deal is done. Business-like.
Is it? Are you suggesting that they didn't need him, or they just saw him, you know, kind of unimportant there? Because this reminds very much of a much more contemporary situation, you know, situations, in fact, both with denunciations in the Soviet time and even now, and even with all sorts of bandits, that they don't care at all about the people whom they find instrumental for their goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks very, very contemporary and very relevant that way. So, so many fates, so many destinies become tragic because people are, you know, they are just expedient, but no, you discard them after you use them. Okay, sorry. It just a very important and new idea to me to see it from the point of view of what it says about them.
No, but you know what's interesting? That on one hand, they adherent to the law. You know, he did what he did. We employed him. He offered that himself. We employed him. We paid him. Now he did his job. Jesus is arrested. Now we have to go on and carry out our resolution to get rid of him. Judas came back with his money. That's his business after all. What can we do? Release Jesus for you? It's not in our hands already. You know, it is somehow, it is apparently, you know, it was done after Jesus was arrested, after they delivered him, because before there was no time for Judah to appear. You know, what Matthew describes, he does not describe synchronically. You know, it might happen later. We don't know when, but not in the same moment when Jesus was arrested, because at this moment, he was always under, so to say, the pressure of high priests. We know that high priests, first of all, had their two councils. We will read about them at night and in the morning, because at night it was unlawful. Again, what is interesting, you know, in our stay here, Olga takes our liturgics, and we call them lawless assembly. But the paradoxical.
Well, I actually insisted that in our Holy Week services, and Katya obeyed, we use the oxymoron because they're the people of the law. So the way we did it was the lawless assembly of the people of the law, беззаконных законник соборище. I insisted on it because it's very strongly there.
But, you know, according to the canon, so to say, they were strictly within the law. That's, you know, that's how the law itself collapsed. In fact, what the law does was invisible. They did not crucify their God because they didn't believe in him. They didn't see this thing. They say, you know, later, if you are elected, come down from the cross and we'll believe as well. As soon as you come down, we'll believe, obviously. Show us who you are. Otherwise, we are under the law. And everything is done according to the law. Even these things, this is, you know, agreement between Judas and us. You delivered, we paid. Now you come back with your money. What do you want from us? So he's thrown and departed. Then he hanged himself. Now they are in front of this money. Money are returned. What are we going to do then? Interesting. You know, they do. I don't know whether we as Orthodox would be that conscientious if the money are returned. We would put them into church treasury or into our,
По-английски деньги в единственном числе.
money, yes. Put it into our pocket or into the treasury. But they say, no, it's unlawful. Unlawful. It's a blood money. We have to redeem this money now. We have to, you know, wash ourselves from this blood according to the law. Let's do it something good. We'll buy the potter's field. That's enough money for it. It's not expensive. Actually, it's a very dear place for me because I stayed there for the 6 months in this
You
monastery.
stayed there. Our whole affair started there. You stayed there.
That's a Kaldama.
Father Michael, I think it's possible to sum up what you are saying in a few words, they just obeyed the protocol.
Oh,
They were the people of the protocol. And that's what the law amounted to them.
exactly.
And because we have we have it all around us all the
We
time.
have all around us. That's the people of protocol. Now, it is interesting. It's aside by Matthew alone. We don't find it anywhere else. It is aside, it's taken out of this kind of time of the trial itself. Now we can go back to trial if you don't have anything to add to it.
Just one thing about Matthew himself, he used to act by the protocol, unfailingly when he was a publican. That was his job. And he would justify himself by that being his job. So to him personally, his conversion meant throwing the protocol out of the window for Christ's sake. So he would note such things because his previous occupation before conversion is relevant here, I think.
Interesting point. Okay,
Father Michael, I
Sure.
have a question.
sure.
So at this point, is Judas asking for forgiveness for what he has done?
Yeah, he doesn't, he is in frustration. He said, okay, let us dissolve our deal. Let's go back. I don't want this money, but we don't know at what point of time it was done. Whether it's after or during the trial, while there were just a moment when, they were about to deliver. If you look at this things, Jesus is arrested by Judas, and they brought him to the high priest. Actually, high priest godfather. Then he led him to Caiaphas, and they had their meeting at night. They decided, okay, he is guilty for this, but they could not make this decision during the night because councils were unlawful during the night. They had to wait for the morning and then collect as many people or members of Synedron as they could. It's another story, but it could not be the full Synedron, obviously. We know that Nicodemus was not there, Joseph was not there. So probably some others too. Not necessarily they lived nearby and so on and so forth, and you can come all of a sudden at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, but anyway, as soon as they decided that, they took him right away to Pilate. And there were deliberations between Pilates, about which we're going to read. Then, according to Luke, Pilate sent him to Herod, and they followed because they also were two high priests. High priests were accusing them in front of the Herod too. Then they all came back and they continued to accuse him. Then there was the issue of Barabbas, about which we're going to read. And they also steered the people to cry relief as Barabbas, release. Then he was sent out to be flogged, tortured, brought back. And then there was a cross procession to the place of execution. And apparently they followed him because they were there at the cross. They looked at it to the very end. And they departed. So what time before Judah could get to them during these kind of things? Probably he would be afraid also. So he would have waited for some kind of time when he could get there to them, So it's somehow not synchronical event, but we don't know when it happened.
So as Olga said, it was just a matter of protocol.
It's a matter of protocol for them, for high priests. Yeah, for high priests and those who made this decision. They are kind of yeah, they follow the protocol.
Yeah, it's not that to him.
Thank you.
It's not that to him, yeah. To him, it's full frustration. Whatever he expected.
It is a
how-
tragedy. It's a
It's a
tragedy.
tragedy. It's a probably the greatest human tragedy in the history. Because Jesus asked him, "Are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Friend, why did you come here?" He was warned several times. And during the Last Supper. And when he came there, he was possessed. It is said in John, and with this morsel, Satan entered him. So he didn't belong himself. Satan drove him to this and then left him. No, obviously then to take him and hang him. But then after that happened, you know, what happened? But we cannot say more about it. I don't know. Some tried, but anyway, it's a lot of written about Judas' betrayal, obviously.
Thank you.
Okay. Now let's continue with this story, because then the trial before the Pilate, which it yes. Now so we read last time of Jesus and Peter's meeting the eye of Jesus who was arrested there. Then we heard the story account of him before Herod, which is only in Luke. Then they brought him back. And now let us read it back to Luke. It's Luke 23, 13, 16. If someone will read it for us, it's Luke 23, verses 13, 16. So when they returned from Herod, Pilate calls back chief priests. Okay, it's interesting.
Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Behold, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore chastise him and release him."
Okay, first of all, so it's his next stage of the trial. He calls again high priests with some rulers who were present, who were about to carry it to the end, right? And said, look, this man is innocent. Now, I did not find guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod. So, but then he goes, I will therefore chastise him and release him. Why to chastise him then? Just for the sake of, just to frighten him for the future sake.
That's for the sake of the protocol. Again,
Again,
his
for the
is
sake
different.
of the protocol.
His is different.
Yes. Now, so now the time of Barabbas comes. So now it is interesting thing. Wait a second. Now, in Luke, it goes straight to the verses 18. They go straight and cried all together, away with this man and release to us Barabbas. It's interesting that in Luke, nothing is said about the conditions that Pilate said to them. He gave them somehow a loophole, but that was loophole not for them, but for himself. And other evangelists gives it, particularly Matthew and Mark, and also in John, which Luke omits. That's explanation. Now, if you go now to Richard, if you don't mind, to go back to Matthew, chapter 27, and read to us 15 to 23, verses 15 to 23.
Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release to the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. And they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ? For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream. May I go on?
Yes. To 23.
Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, which of the two do you want me to release for you? And they said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They all said, let him be crucified. And he said, but why? What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, let him be crucified.
Okay, thank you. So now what, in order, I don't know, obviously nothing is said about thinking of Pilate, because he was afraid. In John, he will inside, he will call, we can read this also, Jesus inside and said, why you don't answer to them, and so on and so forth. We'll read it. But what is interesting in Matthew, that Pilate's wife sent him a message. Don't do anything because I suffered a lot in my dream about him. So he was somehow uneasy about these things, about the whole thing. So he decided, all right, let me offer them option. He didn't realize that, their drive to, by all means, to get rid of Jesus. So therefore he gave them this option. But interesting, he says that, okay, the crowd will decide. And so in Matthew, he even said, all right, whom do you want? Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ, the Messiah? It seemed to him that the people will obviously say, no, Jesus the Messiah. Now the chief priest and the elder persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. What Mark writes, 15, 16, 14, 6:14. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews? The king of the Jews, he asks. The king of the Jews. For he perceived that it was of envy that the chief priest had delivered him up. First of all, it was ironic. Do you want to release for me the king of the Jews? He gives them, a hint Look, it's your king. Obviously, you are Jews. That's your king. Do you want me to release it for you? Release him for you? Barabbas is not mentioned here. Barabbas is not even mentioned as an option in Mark.
Father Michael, I would like to make a note once you're done, and I'm even putting something in the chat to that effect.
Okay.
I checked the interlinear gospel. It's quite fascinating because the nickname of Barabbas, in Matthew specifically, in Greek, the nickname of Barabbas was Jesus. And it is mentioned here in the Greek. So in a way,
Where it is, by the way,
in the interlinear Greek gospel, you can check it in the chat. I parsed it for you specifically. Lehomenon Isun Baraban.
in which gospel?
In Matthew here, in 27, Matthew 27.
Called
I
Bar-
found it. You can look it in the chat. I did find it.
Okay. All right.
I find this very interesting. For
As the ancient authorities, Jesus Barabbas. Okay, fine.
Yeah, and the reason I found it is because in one of the translations it also mentioned him. But so I looked in the original. I find this very interesting because in the Aramaic, Bar Abba just means the son of the father. So in a way, he is like a double of Jesus, except the flip side, a complete opposite. And the nickname might have been very, it may be Joshua, of course, but it still would be extremely ironic, or either that or he lapsed from his actual name. I suspect that if that was his other name, and if Matthew notes it, it's really important that this notion we have encountered in other gospels, that you have kind of doubles or shades to Christ's image, shadows, seems to be very prominent here, because his name Bar Abba is actually renders here complete anonymity. On the other hand, it also is a kind of twist of Jesus' own calling himself the Son of Man, Ben Adam, because that means that, he makes himself equal to everybody, including Bar Abbas, including him, except that he's a true savior. But I find this inclusion of Isun in the accusative to be very, very important in Matthew.
Thank you very much.
People want to omit it because it creates confusion, but I think that explains why Pilate says, shall I crucify your king, or the king of the Jews? Because he also gets confused. To him, moreover, these words, these names mean nothing at all. So he just gets confused. Wait a minute, whom are you pleading for?
Okay, let's read Mark. Now at the feast he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked, and among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the resurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. Yes, Bar Abba. And the crowd came to and asked Pilate to do as he was wont to do for them. It's not high priests, it's a crowd. Now we have to realize that even this crowd was not very representative crowd, because these places were small, usually little in front of this Pretoria. If you go to Jerusalem, old city, you see that they're about maximum you can put there 300-400 people, no more. So, and apparently there were retinues of high priests and so on and so forth, those whom they collected as a, but even this crowd were not that bloodthirsty about Jesus, some of them. So they came and asked. So in a way that's interesting, it's interesting detail in Mark. It was not high priests who asked for them. For them, it was not necessary. No, those rules. It's those crowd, And the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do as he was wont to do for them. So what was a custom? And he answered them in Mark, do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews? So he meant this even king of the Jews, who was crucified as the king of the Jews. For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. So that's how Mark describes things. Now, what about Luke? And Luke now, let's go to Luke back, 1723, if you don't mind to read it for us, Richard, 1723.
Yeah, it just occurred to me before we go on that if Pilate was confused, it's possible that the mob itself was confused too.
Very possible.
It's
Who were not confused as high priests. That's who were not confused.
Yeah, exactly. But
they knew what they want. Actually, it's here. It is on every stage, and particularly in John, we're going to read it too. High priest carries out his obligation, which he didn't, which ironically was mentioned, as a high priest, he prophesied. And as a high priest, he is bringing this ultimate sacrifice by himself on Passover. It's not deed of the Pilate. It's not deed so far even of the crowd. It's a deed of the high priest. And they were never were confused about these things. The chief priests.
They were never confused about these things, but they are following their protocol as faithfully as Pilate is following his.
Yeah. Okay. Now, yes.
That this so-called crowd were people who were selected, because it was a small place, as you said, and probably well guarded. So only certain people would be admitted in small number. In Luke, it says all the people, but it's certainly not the whole nation of Israel.
No, this is not the whole nation of Israel. And Luke will do it because when Jesus was arrested, the great crowd followed him, and they were weeping. So absolutely, but
it sounds so eerily contemporary about both the Stalin trials and today. It is so, if you actually of all people, Father Michael, you know how those.
What do you want to say, Lisa? But say,
say that this is probably people were allowed at the trial, and they supported the high priest. Can it be? It wasn't a random choice, random crowd. It was a selected crowd.
Yeah, they got clearance somehow.
Right.
That I don't know, because it was so done so hastily. Let me imagine, Jesus, first of all, is in the palace of the high priest. He was brought there by a little detachment of the church of the temple police. So it's about 20, 25 people. Now there were servants. There were everybody. So when they arrested He said, let's go all. And since they followed, then they followed it right away to, it's not very far. It's an old, very small place. So they went to Pretoria and they filled this place in front of this building. They called Pilate. Pilate entered in front of the people. He saw this, and Jesus who was brought in. Then he found out, all right, what about this man? I know what his man because I have my own informers. So I'm a governor after all. I'm a Roman governor. I know what's going on here. All right, you say that he's Galilean. Let's go to Herod. I don't want to deal with his Herod's. That's his jurisdiction. Luke simply says it's Herod's jurisdiction. Like Cyril's jurisdiction, Bartholomew's jurisdiction, our jurisdiction. So he went there to Herod's jurisdiction. Jurisdiction mocked Jesus, but he was not after him after all. He just mocked him, put an apparel on him, sent him back. Now they're back there with the same crowd apparently. It's all quickly done. Obviously, I don't know how it was guarded and so on and so forth. There's no description of it, but you can imagine the small place. Then we'll come to the point that he gives Jesus to the Roman soldiers. Now he's not in their jurisdiction. He's not anywhere. He's not jurisdictions even in high priests. No, they did their job. Now he is a Roman criminal. And Jews have, as soon as you are arrested, in any land, in any country, your relatives, your friends, anyone cannot come to you and talk to you and do anything to you. You're under arrest, that's all. You are isolated from the world. When Jesus was deposited into the hands of Romans, when Jesus said, all right, he gave it to, now that's it. We can do it for us after we read this in Luke. We can read these things in John, and they will finish by this today. Okay, Richard, do you want to read it for 23, 17, 23? It's Luke.
But they all cried out together, away with this man and release to us Barabbas, a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they shouted out, crucify, crucify him. A third time he said to them, why, what evil has he done? I have found in him no crime deserving death. I will therefore chastise him and release him. But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed.
Now, may I point out the one irony of the gospel account. If you remember what Caiaphas said on the council after they had the council after the resurrection of Lazarus, if we leave this man as he is, the resurrection of the people will take place. And then Romans will come and take away from us the nation and our place, the temple. So that was their fear. Now, in this story, we know that Jesus, the King of the Jews, did not raise any insurrection in Jerusalem, but Jesus, Barabbas, did. He participated in this, in smallest insurrection in the city. Look, the man who had thrown into foreign insurrection started in the city and for a murder. So actually, but they asked particularly for the one. So the irony of their misgiving everywhere. Just, it just goes from place to place. We can now, if you don't mind, we'll read the parallel place in, let's say, in John. Sorry, in John. Now, let us read John chapter 18.
19.
18. We started from 18, verse 28 on. To begin with, to begin with, to 38 first.
38.
Yes, John 18, verses 28 to 38.
Okay. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the praetorium. It was early. They themselves did not enter the praetorium so that they might not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not an evildoer, we would not have handed him over." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put any man to death." This was to fulfill the word which Jesus had spoken to show by what death he was to die. Pilate entered the praetorium again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingship is not of this world. If my kingship were of this world, my servants would fight, that I might not be handed over to the Jews. But my kingship is not from this world." Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?"
And he had said this. And after he had said that, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no crime in him." Now continue. Let's continue. Let's continue.
Go on, read.
And then he just, all things that we read in Synoptic is omitted. And he right away said, but 39:40, "But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. Will you have me release for you the king of the Jews?" They cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." But Barabbas was a robber. Okay, now this is the point. Then Jesus given to jurisdiction of Pilate here in John. And we can read what happened here in John from 19, chapter 19, verse 1 to 15.
1 to 15.
Yep.
Then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and struck him with their hats. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no crime in him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no crime in him." The Jews answered him, we have a law, and by that law he ought to die, because he has made himself the Son of God. When Pilate heard these words, he was the more afraid. He entered the praetorium again and said to Jesus, where are you from? But Jesus gave no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, you will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have power to release you and power to crucify you? Jesus answered him, you would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore he who delivered me to you has the greater sin. Upon this, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, if you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king sets himself against Caesar. When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Pavement, and in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, behold your king. They cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate said to them, shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, we have no king but Caesar. Then he handed him over to them to be crucified.
Okay. So that is how it is described in John.
Yes.
Any comments?
Yes. I have always wondered if maybe I should check it myself, but if anybody can find it, would be nice. The Pilate's words are usually quoted in Latin because that's probably the way he said these words. The question is how they appear in this gospel. It's John 19, 19, what, 19:5. The reason I'm interested is because Latin has no articles. And ecce homo could mean anything from here is the man, behold the man, to behold a man. And when we hear them in Latin, or for that matter, in Slavonic or even in Russian, they sound like a man. You know, this is a human being too. But I really would like to check what it is in the Greek, because the Greek is most likely not the language Pilate spoke to them. 19:5. I'll find it in a second. Okay. Or anthropos. So in Greek, the definite article is used. Okay. Idou or anthropos.
You know, how, if I may say something, Giblin, who gave us a seminar on John in those days, he actually said, he described, presented this way. Jesus was mocked and beaten. As you know, in these things, he was flagged with this. So he was all kind of semi-alive, all in blood, covered by blood, with a sword. So, and when Pilate brought him, he said, that's your man. Now look at him. Do you want me to do anything more for him? Look at him now.
This is all true, but it's not the whole truth. Because I think it is important to remember what it would be for Pilate's own mentality. And for Pilate's own mentality, I don't know, I doubt, strongly doubt that he spoke Greek to them, but even if he did, he would think in Latin. And so it would be very close to the notion that, look what he has been reduced to. And that is, if we use the indefinite article, which Latin does not give us one way or the other any more than, say, Russian. when you hear "се человек," you don't think about it. The gospel is written in Greek, so it is, in this case, it already may be an interpretation. But what I mean, however, is it is the same kind of ambivalence that we have with the notion of the Son of Man as a possible Son of Man when he calls it himself, because Ben Adam is not articled. So when, because Adam happens to be a private name. Today, of course, we change it. Today we change it. So it could be, in contemporary, it could be Ben Ha-Adam or Ha-Ben Adam and whatever. But in Jesus' own self-reference, it was as ambiguous. And I think this is really important, although Hebrew has articles, and Aramaic doesn't, by the way. Aramaic doesn't, but Hebrew does. Although it is not solved one way or the other. In other words, it may suggest that this appellation, self-appellation by Jesus itself, means I'm one of you. And here, if we don't treat it as a definite article, then Pilate says, behold, one of you, one of us even. In this case, he even becomes kind of influenced by his wife's possible intercession. That he thinks that he also has something to do with him. I think the ambiguity in this respect shouldn't be ignored. At least because when we hear or read or see it in Latin, our feelings are the exact same as when we hear or feel or see it, say, in Russian, in Church Slavonic too, but in Russian especially, and paradoxically in Hebrew, which does have articles. I think it's really important to examine our own reactions to this expression. Even if Pilate doesn't mean too much by it, his language would suggest that he would. And in Latin, you would never use even a demonstrative pronoun. You wouldn't say, here is this man, even. It's just ecce homo. That's it.
Thank you, Olga. I just want to bring your attention a little bit back. When they brought him to the praetorium, there's an irony of John. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the praetorium. And then it was early. They themselves did not enter the praetorium, so that they might not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. It's like the 30 pieces of silver. It's unlawful. That's money. So let's keep ourselves undefiled. It's extremely ironic. John, who is kind of saying, they brought him right before, and Passover, actually. Jesus just, had the Passover night before, this very night, with his disciples, saying, this is, new Passover. This is my body. This is my body. So kind of, this is two sides of the Passover. Two sides, which are here. Human completely, and human divine, which they don't see, but they perform. The high priest in their protocol. So they are, as Olga mentions, they are faithful to the protocol, or on and on and on, even to this small ironic detail.
I think it's very actually amusing rhetorically, let him die, but we'll eat our Pascha, It sounds a little bit like the underground man. Let the whole world goes to hell, but I'll have my tea. I'll drink my tea.
Yes, that's, for them, it's if we kind of, I don't know, it's difficult to enter into this, but for them, Jesus is a nuisance. You know, he takes away the people. People followed him. He's a powerful preacher. He heals people. And what about us? Who hold this, you know, we're hierarchy. There's only one temple for the whole Jewish nation. And we're the top of it. And we guard it. We guard this temple. There are the Romans here. We have to preserve all these things. And this man is nuisance for us. Nuisance for us. Obviously, we'll eat our Passover. You know, let's say our troops bombing Ukraine, but doesn't mean that, you know, we don't celebrate Easter. Obviously, we'll celebrate Easter. We'll eat our Pascha and Kulich. Well, you know, it's different things, you know, different things. It's different protocol, so to say. Different protocol. So they brought that to Pretoria. But brothers and sisters, I have to finish now because, you know, it's Saturday. So it's 12 after 11, but we will definitely continue.